Sí, lo vamos a intentar. Yo pienso que el culé, el barcelonista, el aficionado, el socio debe entender que la situación es muy difícil, la situación es complicada, sobre todo a nivel económico, para competir con los máximos competidores, tanto en Madrid, en España, como en Europa. Nosotros tenemos una situación económica que no tiene nada que ver con 25 años atrás, que cuando venía el entrenador decía quiero este y este. Esto no, ahora no es así. Ahora no es así. Entonces no estamos en las mismas condiciones que los otros clubes que tienen situaciones de fair play muy ventajosas o situación económica mucho mejor que la nuestra. Entonces el barcelonista lo tiene que entender. Yo lo entiendo como entrenador, así lo he hablado con el presidente, con Deco, y nos vamos a ajustar a eso. Eso no significa que no queremos competir y no queremos luchar por los títulos, pero esa es la situación del Barça en estos momentos. Entonces yo pienso que el culé, el aficionado, debe entender que necesitamos estabilidad, que necesitamos tiempo, pero que intentaremos y haremos cosas buenas para competir.
Look, man, I did not want to have to make this video. I really didn't. At the same time, I had to sit here for the past several months and listen to various talking heads, YouTubers, and social media accounts badmouth a man who did a hell of a job managing Barcelona. So let's talk about it. First, I distinctly remember hearing pundits and various talking heads, especially in this TV program, which is very popular in Spain, called El Chiringito, talk about how the likes of Osasuna and Rayo had better squads because when Xavi took over, people are quick to forget we were languishing in mid-table mediocrity. The club was ninth on match day 12 when he took over. This was during the 21-22 season, a season that, lest we forget, was the first season without the likes of this guy. Maybe you may have heard of him, this little known player, very obscure, called Messi. And also, Piqué was on his last legs, and various other players were out. It was basically the last remnants of the golden generation that gave us two trebles, one in 2009 and another one in 2015, something that only Bayern Munich has also accomplished. Most clubs don't even have one, let alone two. So the thing is, many of those players, most of those players, they should have left many years ago. Even Bartomeu, arguably the worst president of the Barcelona history, of the history of Barcelona, he admitted that that club had needed a rebuild since at least 2019. In my opinion, it should have been 2017, but I digress. So the thing is that rebuild was long overdue, and it was not until Xavi took over that process has started. The problem is that we were dealing with this thing called the pandemic, and stadiums were closed, and a lot of the income that the club got was decreased as a result. Now, mind you, this was exacerbated by the fact that Bartomeu, who again was arguably the worst president in the history of the club, had spent millions of euros on wages for aging players that were clearly past their prime and were just living off their legacy and of their past history. Again, we're talking about the likes of Piqué, Alba, hell, even arguably Busquets, but Busquets, I think, is one of the lesser offenders. So many of these players were just there collecting a paycheck, and many of the young players, the likes of even though it may seem like a joke now, even Ansu Fati, because of the injuries, he's not the player he once was. But Ansu Fati, Pedri, and many of the young players were on short-term contracts while the older stars were on massive wages, and then were just living life of, again, their legacy without really doing anything to push the club forward. So we run into a situation where Laporta, upon taking over in 2021, had very little financial fair play in order to make any signings. The only signings that we made that summer, I remember, I think it was Aguero on a free and also Eric Garcia on a free. So yeah, there was not much that we could do in order to get new signings, as well as Nike. Now, I played the clip earlier that you saw in order to, first of all, clear a lot of the misconceptions that Xavi has said that somehow they were not able to compete. No, they are able to compete, and the club did compete. Matter of fact, they won the league title in 2022 2023. That was the first league title in 4 years, and the first league title after the Messi era, with 88 points. Now, as you can see in this graphic that I'm showing you now, the club got 50 points after 19 match days, which is the halfway of the season, en route to getting 88 points that year. Now, if Xavi was making excuses, how can you explain the fact that the club did get that league title that year? It would not make sense. So I don't know why people or pundits were saying that he was somehow making up excuses, saying that the club could not compete. No, the club can't compete because they have done so in the past. Even last season, the club finished with 85 points, which is only 3 less than the 88 points that we got the season previously. And the way that some people were talking about Xavi is as though the season had ended with the club getting 70 points and struggling to qualify for Europe. Mind you, yes, I understand that Real Madrid got 95 points, and some would say the club really never really challenged for the title. That, first of all, that is not true. There were many instances in which the club could have, it was close to Real Madrid. But let me not even get into it because that's a whole nother discussion. But the club finished 10 points behind Real Madrid that season with 85 points, and Real Madrid got 95 points. First of all, that 95 points, I believe it might be the 4th or 5th best tally in the league history. So there's no shame to lose to that Real Madrid side getting 95 points, because 85 points would win most leagues in history as well, or at least 80% of the leagues, I should say. Now, I say all this to say that there's a lack of perspective among supporters. And recently I started, well, not recently, however, in the past few years, I've been watching a lot of basketball, and basketball fans, by and large, they understand the concept of a rebuild. Now, a rebuild is when you're not likely to challenge for the title, so then you just get rid of your best players for assets, be it draft picks or potentially just getting rid of some heavy contracts so that you can have a better salary cap. Now, last year, the Oklahoma City Thunder were in the midst of a rebuild, and I don't think anybody realistically expected them to make it to the NBA Finals. However, they did get first seed and went to the Western Conference Finals. Now they did make some more acquisitions and are now contenders in the West. However, it was not until they were able to make those acquisitions and increase their salary cap that they were recognized as contenders. And I take all that to mean that the football club Barcelona, the situation that the club was in just a couple of years ago when Xavi took over in late 2021, early 2022, is a lot worse than some people like to realize. The club was really close to becoming a limited company and losing the fan ownership model. Now, even to this day, we're still struggling to register players because of the whole almost situation. I know President Laporta had to go to the tribunal, sports tribunal in Spain, in order to appeal the denial of the registration that the league got. Now, I say all that to mean that Xavi, even Flick, because he's doing a hell of a job, even if he has gotten 38 points, which is less than what Xavi got last season. And the way that people, again, were talking about Xavi last season, you would think that we were languishing in mid-table with relegation looming on the horizon. No. This is not, although it may seem like it, this is not a video defending Xavi, because if somehow we end up in the quarterfinals losing to any team, even if it's, I don't know, PSG or any other team, and we end up with 80 points and do not win the Copa del Rey, I want people to remember the fact that we are making steps in the right direction. The economy is getting better season by season, and hopefully soon we may be able to afford better signings. Not that, again, the players that we have now are bad, quite the contrary. Nevertheless, we are clearly missing some key players in key areas. For example, if Lamine Yamal goes down, we don't really have anybody who can dribble one-on-one and create opportunities. We're also missing a quality forward option, because let's face it, Lewandowski is 36, almost 37 years old, and he's not getting any younger. So we need to actually look to replace him. And it's difficult to do that when you have, like Xavi said, no financial fair play. Now, again, that's not to say that they're not going to compete. Quite the contrary, they're going to compete, but we can't be placing all these heavy expectations on the club, thinking that we're going to win the treble. Even a few months ago, when Barcelona had that crazy winning run, people were saying that they were going to win the treble, and even then I was not convinced, because I knew that this club had many glaring holes, right? So I'm not surprised about the bad patch that we hit around December, because this club is neither old enough when it comes to the likes of Pedri, Gavi, Balde, Lamine, or have enough firepower in all areas of the pitch in order to take on 3 competitions at the same time. We can go for the league, maybe we can try to go for the UCL, and we can go for the cup, but I don't think we have the capacity to go for all 3. And even HITC Sevens, Off Pods, which I thought was above the clickbait, did a video saying that Barcelona were back. So the thing that I don't get is that Barcelona won a league again for the first time in 4 years. Last season, or the season before that, I should say, in the year 2022, 2023. And we're back amongst the last eight of the UCL last year. So how can you say that quote unquote Barcelona is back, even though we've been back for at least 2 years? Maybe he meant to say that even though we won the league in the year 2022, 2023, we did not compete in the UCL. Now, people like to ignore all the mitigating factors. First of all, in the UCL season 2022-2023, we got a tough group. We got Bayern Munich as well as Inter Milan, who, lest we forget, went all the way to the final that year and, by all accounts, should have beaten City because they played them up the park. City actually got lucky that year. And furthermore, I believe it was in the year 2021, 2022, right? I think that City won the league that year, and Chelsea, I think they didn't even finish among the top four in the Premier League. However, they made it to the UCL final and actually beat City. I will dare anyone to who can argue that Chelsea was a better team than City that year. Because there's this notion that somehow winning the UCL means that you're the best team in Europe. Not necessarily. It just means that you won the UCL. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. The problem with the UCL is that it's a knockout competition. In a knockout competition, you don't play all the teams. If you get lucky with a draw, you can go on a nice run and then just win, but that does not mean that you're the best. Even in take any club competition in Europe, right? You have La Liga, Premier League, Bundesliga. Who's gonna argue that the winner of the cup competition in that league is the best team in that league? That makes absolutely no sense. However, we apply that same logic to the UCL and somehow say that the best team in Europe is the one that wins the knockout competition, where if you have a bad day or if you have a key injury to one of your players, let alone three, like we had at some point between the UCL fixture for Inter away and the one at home. So we had three of our back line. Araujo got injured, Christensen got injured, and also I think what was the last one? Koundé, sorry. I almost lost it. Koundé was the one that also got injured. So most of our back line got injured, and we ended up having to play a half-retired Piqué and Eric Garcia, who is a decent player, but is not our best defender. So clearly there were mitigating circumstances while we went out. And we only went out partly because of our injuries, but also partly because of a blatant handball that was not called when Dumfries was trying to head the ball in the away fixture. And he had his hand over his shoulder with VAR, mind you, and that was still not called. So, again, there were mitigating circumstances for going out in the UCL. Now, the last thing I want to say before I leave is that I was arguing with somebody, I forgot who. So I think it was on Reddit actually, and the guy made the point that Xavi somehow took the club as far as he could. Mind you, again, I made the point that under Xavi, we've been averaging 85 points for 38 match days, and I don't think I said this, but before Xavi, in the 102 games before Xavi, because Xavi had 102 games, 102 league games. In the 102 games before him, between Koeman, Valverde, and Setien, mind you, all three of those managers, they had a Messi a younger Piqué, a younger Busquets, a younger Alba. All of them had those types of players. Dembele, they were only able to average 78 points per season per 38 games, as opposed to Xavi, who averaged 85. Now, who in their right mind can say that Xavi did a bad job? I don't know. I think maybe it's just people who either just like to talk out of their behind, or people who hate him for whatever reason. But I don't get it. I don't get it. So it's just facts that he did a great job, right? And again, some people want to say, "Oh, we underperformed in Europe." So let me get this straight. The guy took the club, I think, during match day 12. There's no money to make any quality signings. Most of them are free. And you expect him to take all these young players, right? No signings, take the club from ninth table to champions, and also take it to the final of the Champions League. I don't, who's making up these expectations? So this is what Xavi was saying, is that yes, they're gonna compete, but you can't put all this undue pressure in them to perform, and if somehow they don't reach the final of the Champions League, it's a failure. Or if they don't win the league, even though they had a high points tally, it's a failure. So it's absurd the amount of pressure that this club is under. What they don't take into account, and when I mean they, I mean again supporters, pundits, when they don't take into account the fact that the club was in very dire straits not that long ago, and even now, even though the financial situation is better, is still not what it could be, right? As we've seen with the Olmo situation. So, and in spite of that, Xavi at this stage had more points than Flick, who is supposed to be this mastermind who was doing better than Xavi. And yes, in the UCL we are doing better. However, here's the thing: the UCL is still a club knockout competition, and you could get PSG in the round of 16. So you could go out even sooner than we did last year. Now, does that mean that Flick is a worse manager than Xavi? No. However, this is what I'm saying. Things have to be put into perspective. So, you know what, man? I'm gonna leave it at that. If you like this video, like this video. If not, you can hit the dislike button. I'm out.